Hi, everybody, and welcome one more time to El Camino People, the podcast. We always talk about Camino, we always talk about pilgrims, pilgrimage from all over the world. But today we're going to be doing something different. Most of the times we talk about the stories of the pilgrims that already walked the Camino. But today we have a first time pilgrim and a long time pilgrim that has been walking all over the place. And we are going to talk about those questions that raise up when you are getting ready to walk your Camino de Santiago, those mistakes that you make, those little things that people share that sometimes are wrong, sometimes are right. So let me introduce you to my longtime friend Quinton and my new friend Rebecca. How are you doing, guys? Thank you so much for being today. For the ones that don't know, Quinton is right now in LA. It's 1 a.m. and Rebecca's in Australia. So this seems, it's incredible how long the Camino is, and this community is all over the world.
Good morning.
Morning.
Wow, really talkative today.
I'll slowly
So,
wake
first question, Rebecca is going to be the new pilgrim. This is going to be your first Camino. How did you decide to walk the Camino de Santiago? Why did you choose to walk the Camino de Santiago?
Yeah, so I've had a few friends do it probably about around 10 years ago now, and always been interested in it, but just hasn't been the right timing with kids, work, and all those other life things that get in the way. So started researching about 5 years ago and actually found one of Quentin's books that he'd written about his, I think it was your first Camino, is that right?
It was my first one, yes. Sorry,
Yeah.
my dog has decided to wake up at 1 a.m. in the morning.
And that really inspired me. So he really writes, you really feel as if you're there with him, the way the book's written. So I was really inspired again. Unfortunately, then COVID hit, and I'm not sure what it was like for other parts of the world, but we couldn't leave our suburbs in Melbourne. So really locked up for a couple of years, really. So coming out of COVID, kids have finished school. I now have more flexibility with work, and it was just the right timing. And after being locked up for so long, really wanted to do something different and challenge myself. So yeah, so now's the time.
That's perfect. And for the ones that don't know, Quentin, he's been here a couple of times. We'll be talking about your first Camino that they can listen on the previous podcast. We'll be talking about gear, but tell us a little bit, Quentin, how did you decide to walk the Camino? Was that your first long distance hike? Were there previous long distance hikes?
I've been a hiker and a traveler pretty well all my life. So it was probably my first long hike, although I've done like week-long backpacking trips, trekking, a couple of weeks here and there. Nothing that probably hit over like 500 kilometers, but it was certainly a bucket list item that I just couldn't not do. It was calling me. I think that you hear that a lot.
One of the things that surprised me the most, I live in Spain, like right here in front of my window, the Camino goes through the front of my house. I see pilgrims almost every day with a backpack. I'm like, here you are, guys, from Australia, from an Australian living in the States, and decide to walk the Camino de Santiago. And like, this is incredible. Like the story of the people that carries and that go through the Camino is just amazing. But there is much more to this story, because you guys been known each other for a long time, but the Camino kind of like reunited your both Caminos. So what happened there?
Yeah, that's right. We used to know each other, oh gosh, way back in the 1990s. And then kind of went our separate ways. Someone, abandoned us and moved to a whole different country. So yeah, it was only when I started Googling sort of books and about the Camino, and this name came up, and I thought, it's a bit of an unusual name. So yeah, reached out via email, and I've been hassling him ever since with my random questions, and he's been amazing with no matter what I come out with. He's been incredibly patient with all my questions, and
Are you talking about me, or is there someone else similar?
I know he's very modest.
No, it's been pretty amazing. I get this email out of the blue after maybe like 20 years, 25 years. And I think we just kind of reconnected over the stories and the preparation. And Rebecca's been planning it for about 5 years, and things get in the way like life does usually. And I'm so excited because it's only, less than 2 months now that you're actually going.
54 days.
Wow, who's counting?
Little app on my phone that tells me, gives me daily update.
And that's one of the things that that surprised me a lot. Like, how long do people plan for the Camino? Now, now with COVID, with the whole world situation that we're living, like, when did you start your planning for your Camino, Rebecca? What was the first day that you said, I'm gonna walk the Camino?
It was probably pre-COVID. So my daughter finished school, and as a parent, you sort of have this weird time. Then they kind of get their license and they leave school, and you just, I don't know, you kind of feel a bit like not unneeded, but your life just changes. And I suddenly had time to myself, and also work circumstances change. So that's a big thing because it's such a big commitment. You need, coming from Australia, you need that 6 weeks to do the full walk. So for me, trying to get that 6 weeks was my biggest challenge. So yeah, as soon as those international borders opened up, I was back planning again, full planning. Like there was no going back.
And that's one of the things that sometimes, Quentin, I know you're a planner, but not like a full-time planner. But right now, with all the information that you have online, with all the amount of books that we have online, and with all the amount of pilgrims that they have like 3, 4, 5 years to plan the Camino, is there the option of too much planning for the Camino, or is never too much planning?
I think the logistics planning of getting there and leaving, yes, spend some time doing it, and maybe your first day think about it. But I'm a big advocate of don't book accommodation, especially on the Francis. Just go with how you feel. You might meet some people, you might not be feeling strong yet. Just go with the flow.
And what about you, Rebecca? Are you one of those person that needs to have an Excel sheet with where I'm going to stay, the numbers, the places, how much does it cost? Do you already have an Excel sheet with all the places?
I don't. That is my nature to do that. So this is really outside my comfort zone to be going to, overseas by myself and not have things planned out goes against everything that I would normally do. So this is really about getting outside my comfort zone, and I'm really resisting every urge not to book anything else. So I booked the first couple of nights and that's it.
But that's one of the
That's
best
one of
things,
the
I
things.
think, especially about the Francis, because you really don't need to do it. It's not like a backcountry hike where you got to plan your food supplies and those type of activities. Here, there's a cafe pretty well every 5 kilometers if you feel like a break.
And that's one thing, I get a lot of people, they feel, as you were saying, sometimes unsafe, sometimes they need to plan. And if you need to, it's okay. And as Quinton was in, probably Spain was one of the safest place, by National Geographic to travel by yourself as a woman. And the Camino Frances is probably the most well, every 5 kilometers you have a town, there is a, police, there is hotels, there's everything. But I know that a lot of people, they really need that, kind of like reassurance that there is a place that I'm gonna be able to sleep. So if you need that, it's okay. But really, as Quinton was saying, get your first days, and we will talk about the latest day. But don't plan too much. And
Yeah,
question for
I
you,
really want to
Rebecca.
resist it. It's a big part for me not to do that. It's a
Mhm.
real challenge. So I really want to make that my challenge not to do that. And it's hard because there's a lot of, particularly on the online forums, there's a lot of talk about how busy it is and how full they're all going to be. And there's this sort of underlying fear that everything's
Mhm.
going to be full. So it is really hard to ignore that and put it off to the side and try and just go with the flow.
I find those forums usually are mostly people who haven't been before that are asking questions. So.
Yeah, and they get nasty. They get really
Ooh,
nasty,
don't
some
get
of
me
them.
going about that. I don't go with any of them again, because that's the thing, a lot of people, they're like, I want to have my backpack transfer. I'm like, and people's like, don't do that. I'm like, he's not asking doing it or not. He's asking how he can do it.
How? Yeah.
Or some people want to sleep in hotels, and people are like, don't sleep in hotels. I'm like, he wants to sleep in hotels. It's okay. There's nothing wrong on everything. This is your own Camino. But people seem to be elderly, judgmental, and that's the big question. What is a pilgrim? A pilgrim is one that doesn't go on forums and start complaining to other pilgrims. But I think that gets us to, one of the main questions when you walk the Camino, and it's accommodations. And so for some people, that's a big problem, because getting to know how, the accommodations work in the Camino. We have the albergues, the private albergues, the hotel, the hostels, the paradores. We have a wide arrangement, and mostly in the Camino Frances, you can go from spending 10 euros to up to as much as you want on the Camino. So what were your ideas on where do you want to sleep, Rebecca, when you're walking?
I plan to do a mix. I am someone who likes my own space, and I am a light sleeper and someone who needs their sleep. So I will try different options and see what works for me. Very open to anything. So that's where I'm really just trying to go with the flow and see how it all rolls out. Um, I might hate it. I'm not sure how I'm going to go with sharing space with a lot of other people.
You're going to have
I
a
know,
lot of fun on the Camino. So.
but I don't think you're like someone who loves a lot of people and sharing space and things either. So I'm assuming that's outside your comfort zone as well. Did you struggle with that?
I'm pretty antisocial. That's why I got into hiking in the first place, for sure. And yes, sometimes the abordages are a little bit too much. And every now and again, like I'll look forward to, like when I get to Burgos, I'll have a hotel room or something so I can have that space. So especially after like the longer hikes, any of them, I do get a little tired of like the hostels or albergues. But there is something special about the time before you go to bed. Like in the common room, there's a guitar you can play. People are telling stories in different languages and from different parts of the world. And that part of like the hostel kind of world is just the best part of my experience.
And that's one of the things that, that I try to get at. I get a lot of clients like you, Rebecca, that they need to try their time. They're professionals that have been working hard. This is a once in a lifetime experience. And I get, some people that really need their sleep. Some people, for them, it's going to be once in a lifetime. And you deserve a good, night of sleep. But as Quinton was saying, right now with private albergues, you have the experience, maybe you can have your own private room or have a small room where you can, sleep better and have the vibe of both of walls. And also sometimes there is a couple of donativos that they're a must. Sometimes sleeping on the floor is worth a million hotels, and I will trade any parador for sleeping in some of the albergues. What are the albergues that you think, Quentin, that they are mandatory on the front desk, or places that you have to stop no matter what?
And I know the one you're probably talking about is in Granon.
Grañón. That's
I
a once in a
have
lifetime experience.
I have a whole nother story about that one. So
Go for it.
that's an interesting story by itself. It was actually on my first Camino that someone that I'd met and we'd been walking together. It was raining and pouring, and we'd heard amazing things about this Donativo in Granon. So we came into town. It was pouring. We were looking around. We couldn't find where this albergue was, and literally, like out of the shadows and lightning cracking, this old man who looked kind of like a wizard, and we kind of figured he was a pilgrim, appeared and like said, "Oh, I'm going to the albergue as well. Follow me." And so we followed him up the stairs. And as I was kind of going up the stairs to the main entrance, I had this like strange feeling that something bad was going to happen or something was wrong. And I got to the doorstep of going inside the albergue, and I looked at my friend and I was like, "I can't stay here. There's something wrong." And she looked at me and said, "I have exactly the same feeling." So we got the hell out of there and went to the next town, which is about 4 or 5 kilometers away. Halfway through, the rain cleared, a rainbow came out, and just this like weight lifted off us. And then we heard a few days later that gentleman that we followed in ended up like starting a fight or stealing things in the albergue. And we just had this strange sense of foreboding that something was wrong. And it ended up not being the albergue. It ended up being that individual that stayed there. So that is one of those things that I will never forget, that feeling that I could tell something was going to be wrong.
For the ones that don't know, Grañón is an albergue that is on the top of a little tower. So you have kind of like two places for pilgrims to sleep on the floor, but they have a communal dinner. It's one of those magic places that at night also they go to church and they have like a praying, sharing time. So it's one of those places that, doesn't matter where you're from, why you're walking, you feel the Camino community and the Camino family there.
And I've stayed there other years and it's been great. So it's definitely not the albergue. It was that individual for sure. But to your question, I think I found that like the pure like municipals and donativos, I didn't really enjoy those. They were okay, depends on the people, but generally like the quality of the space and everything is a little lower than say a private albergue that's maybe a few dollars more. And for someone like me that often works and travels, I'll pay a little bit more for a little bit more space, Wi-Fi, that type of convenience. And so I always end up staying at the private albergues. They just seem to suit me better. So.
Also, one of the misconceptions, a lot of people they think private albergues is a business, but some of them they are, Camino lovers that decided to stay in the Camino, build a way of living there, and some of them are incredible. Like I have met incredible friends that run albergues, and you feel like family. And some of the public ones that you were saying, sometimes they're run by city halls or whatever, and they're sometimes really
Yeah.
left behind. But
And a
and what is
good
your
example
thought
is
about? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Casa Susie is
Casa
an
Associate,
amazing
of
place
course. Yeah,
run by
Australian, of
Australians.
course,
So
running
yeah.
from the Australian people. And Pamplona, Fermin is from Pamplona. Beautiful love story. If you never heard about them, we have a beautiful interview with them, but that's one of the mandatory places to stay also.
And the other thing that I found, for whatever reason, the vegetarian albergues along the way have a really, really good communal vibe. And there's one, I think it's Casa Verde
Casa
in
Verde, yeah.
Hospitalia de
There we
Abrigo.
go.
Yep, is really, really good. It's just got a really cool kind of hippie communal vibe, and they're just a little bit more on the hippie side, the vegetarian ones, but the food is amazing. The people are really good, and the atmosphere is just amazing. There's like 3 or 4 that I can remember along the way. That vegetarian ones are always really good. So.
And Rebecca, this is your first time in Spain?
Yes.
And that gets me to the other thing. Like once you travel all the way across the world, I'm like you're spending a good chunk of money. Also, there is great hotels here in Spain that you're gonna be able to find anywhere else. We have the Paradores, we have really small, great hotels that are a little boutique. So, what are your thoughts, Quentin, on sometimes giving yourself, that relaxed day in a really nice bed?
I'm all for it. I find that after about 10 days in an albergue, I need a little bit of private space and just people to leave me the hell alone so I can kind of recharge again. So I'll usually try and do it in Burgos is a good one.
Because there is a hotel right on the left side of the cathedral that you open your window and you see the whole cathedral. Incredible.
Yeah. Those ones are really good. The other thing that I have found though is sometimes if you're going to take a day off, always take a day off and have a hotel, because then you have the whole day to enjoy it, have a shower, do those type of things. But sometimes having a day off in a hotel in a small town is really good. I think my first Camino, I didn't stop at Burgos, but I stayed an extra day in Hontanas. And that's such a beautiful, tiny little Camino town that it was just a great
There's
experience.
nothing to do other than just being with yourself.
Yeah, it was nice.
So that's the mix. Days off. So someone that is going on the first Camino, Rebecca, have you planned for any day off? So really your time is so concerned that you don't have any time for day off.
I've probably got 3 or 4 days along the way. So I haven't picked specific places yet, but definitely factored in a few days. And I know I'll need, as you're just saying, sort of probably once a week, I will need that night just by myself, have the good shower, wash the hair, all those important things. And just have that time to recharge. And what you've talked about before, you were saying the atmosphere at nights sounds amazing. And I really want to be part of that. So I don't want to stay at hotels all the time. So I really probably once a week, I'm allowing myself to do that.
That's probably a good mix. And we did this thing maybe a couple of months ago that we kind of did a virtual Camino. Remember,
Yeah.
Rebecca, we were like, oh, where are you today? And you kind of realize that 30 days or however long it's going to take you is a really long time. So a day a week in a hotel or whatever is a really smart idea.
It is. And
I do
also the
love
price,
that.
as you were saying, is not that expensive. Like there's really nice hotels depending on the time that, sometimes even if you find someone else or you want to stay with, a lot of people like, oh, hotels are so expensive. Like sometimes can be double what a private albergue is. Not really that big of a difference. As you were saying before, private to public albergue, the difference sometimes is 2, 3 euros, and it goes from here to here. So
And almost it's not uncommon. I found instead of booking on like booking.com, go to a hotel, especially the smaller ones, and ask if they have Pilgrim rates, and they usually give you 20% off.
yeah, and always, if even if you look on Booking, go search for the number. Booking usually gets around 10%, 15%. So, hotels will be super happy if you book with them instead of with Booking. If you tell them, sometimes they will give you a better rate.
Excellent.
And what are your think, Quentin, when you walk in the Camino Frances, you're coming all the way across the world? What are the places that someone should, take a day off or visit or take a little longer time on those places?
That's pretty hard because I think that's an individual thing as well. Pamplona is a beautiful city.
Of course.
For me and my pace, I'm never there to stay like at an appropriate time to stay the night. So I think it depends a lot on space. I think Burgos is a good place to stay. The city is not so big that you get lost in it, and you're about to hit the Meseta, which is pretty barren for a lot of people. I really like Astorga, and I'm forgetting the name of the town at the bottom of the mountain from
Molina Seca, when you get down
Molina.
from Cruz de Ferro.
Yep, with the waterfall or the rushing water, and that's a beautiful town. I love staying there for sure. And why am I forgetting the first town in Galicia at the top of the mountain?
Sobreiro.
Oh, Sobreiro. Yeah, that's a beautiful place too. I would stay there too. So.
Yeah.
What makes them different to other? What makes them stand out?
I'm a big history buff, so if there's some story of history or something unique architecturally about it, that will really draw me. Like Molinseca, there's a big fast flowing river that you go across. Sobrero has this like rocky structure of all their buildings made out of like stone, and it's very, very Celtic all of a sudden, so it feels
Also
different.
the place where the Camino, as the Camino it is right now, was born, and like Elias Baliña, the priest that started painting the arrows, is buried there. So there's a lot of mystical, and also there's a lot of history about the grill being there. There's that kind of like Celtic vibe, and if you stay the night, it's incredible. It's one of those places. But for example, in Osebreiro, you have to book because there's such a small accommodations that if you want to stay in your own room, there's one of those places that you have to call in advance.
Yeah, although I think one year I did stay in the municipal.
It's one of the good ones, but it
2 days
gets
in a row.
full. Yeah. Oh, they allowed you?
It was kind of on the shoulder season, so it was okay. So.
Oh, okay. And we continue.
Really, sorry to interrupt,
Oh,
but
no,
what
no,
I
go
love
ahead. Sorry.
and what tells me I have to do this is every time I start talking about it, and even with our little messages back and forth, I get this like buzz as soon as I start talking about it. I get so excited, just feel this buzz that just like I have to do it. And it's happening like now as part of this conversation, but even someone will ask me what I'm doing, and I just get this feeling, and I don't know, maybe that's the calling people talk about, but it's, I can like feel it now. I'm like,
remember that halfway through day one when you're going up the
I know.
Pyrenees and you're cursing us all. It's like, why the hell did you make me do this?
I do feel you're going to block me like day one when I start whinging. You'll be like, sorry, busy for the next 30 days.
No, I am. It's really strange. I am so looking forward to it. It's like, I think I've done 6, 7 Caminos now, and I'm still chasing the experience of the very first Camino.
I think that's something that we all carry, and that's why we know. Usually, they say that around 50% of the people that walks one Camino gets back and again and again and again. And here we are as example. Unlike we just walk, it can be the Camino de Santiago, can be any other Caminos, but there's something that I think nowadays calls people to walk more. And
it's cheaper than therapy.
Oh, that's for sure, and much better. And what are the other questions, Rebecca? When you start walking the Camino, I guess the first one is accommodation and, when to travel, when to walk the Camino, the time of the year. What are the other questions that you had or that you still have?
It was definitely time of year for me. I'm not someone who loves the heat. So I was hoping to go in April, but unfortunately work didn't quite make that happen. Packing was another one for me. So
conversations.
Countless conversations.
I know that one. He's a bad thing to have when you're looking for gear. I keep adding things to my Amazon list, and he's his fault.
Yeah, that's one thing I do plan a lot is like gear, and I get a little obsessed by that. It's just a through hiker thing, so not necessarily Camino related, Appalachian Trail or somewhere like that. You think about every ounce, every gram.
So let's go to the basics of the Camino, and I know that a lot of people they think of the Camino as a backpacking experience, but I will call it a different thing. I don't know what will be the name, but really there's no need, like if you're walking the Appalachian or the PCT or the GR11, the Camino, you have stores almost everywhere. There's no need to carry that extra max gear. So what are your top 10, tips to walk on the Camino. And we're going to start with the backpack, how to choose a good backpack for the Camino de Santiago.
Was that question to me or Rebecca?
To you. I guess Rebecca will love to hear. I already hear
She's probably sick
about
of
it.
me hearing this, but I think no matter what backpacking trip you do, people always pack too much. So I would always say get a backpack a little bit smaller than you think, because you're guaranteed to fill it up, and this way you'll be forced not to carry too much stuff. That's
So how
always,
many liters for the Camino? A lot of people, they say 40, 35.
everyone's individual. I definitely wouldn't go more than 40. I think mine is 25, so it's a little smaller. But
That's a little
yeah,
too
anything
extreme.
more than 40, you're carrying too much for sure. So.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I've settled at 35, and that's probably only been the good influence from from Quentin. But,
As long as your pockets don't start bulging out the sides. I've seen people do that. And I cannot stand personally when things dangle from my backpack. It drives me
No,
insane.
that's rule number one. No things dangling on your backpack. First of all, they destabilize you. They don't go well, and it's bothering. They get stuck. So no, everything is supposed to be in the backpack unless it's something that is getting dry out, like a socks or
Well,
something.
I think rule number one is if you're going to listen to music, don't blare it from a Bluetooth headset, Bluetooth speaker.
Oh,
yes.
that's mandatory. Music, please. If you like music, get your own head. No, no music for everyone else. And then I guess question number two is shoes, gear. I'm like, what do you put on your shoes? Flip-flops, boots, sneakers, trainers, running. Rebecca, what are your thoughts about that? When you start researching or didn't do much research, I'm like, you hike, you run.
I've tried a few different shoes, and I'm super fortunate to have access to podiatrists at where I work. So I often potter in with my latest shoes, and he's like, no, bring them back in a few months, and he'll check out the tread and my foot. And so I was fortunate. The second pair, the Brooks Cascadia trail runners, have been perfect for me. And I'm done up to 30 kilometers in them, and yeah, no issues. So I've been super lucky. So even today on the front, it was 14 kilometers, and people had the paramedics there taping up their feet and blisters, and I was like, people, come on, like make better choices. So, but footwear is another thing that there's so many questions about it. It's a really hot topic, and it's such an individual thing. I think you've just got to try a few different pairs, get them fitted properly. And the only other thing I'll be taking are flip-flops, which to me in Australia are thongs. So that's it. That's all I'm taking.
What are your thoughts?
I'm a big trail runner. I use Brooks Cascadias now as well, and want a bunch of other ones. But I think, like Rebecca said, it's kind of an individual thing. You pick what ends up working for you. But the one thing I think most people don't take into account is that the Camino is more of an urban hike than like a remote hike. There are some parts. So I think a lot of people come in bringing boots or shoes or something, expecting much more of a remote hike. And I did that on my first Camino. I wore boots, pretty lightweight boots, but I just didn't expect as much flat and as much kind of road walking or compacted gravel walking. So take that into account and then choose your shoes based on that, not assuming that it's a mountainous walk.
I agree with you both. It's something so personal, but as a rule, boots that unless you have some ankle problems or something, or you're walking the Camino in winter, is a no-no. And I think something really important, like nobody has ever walked 25K for 30 days in your life. So go to a podiatrist, get your feet checked, and
Except for him.
yeah, unless we're people like this guy. But I got my insoles made, and that make a big difference, and try out different things. And like at the end, and if they don't work, you have plenty of stores, or you have Amazon that you can change. But
And I know
don't
so
do
many
any weird
people
experiments.
that will try and save $20-$30 on a pair of sneakers. And if you're going to spend extra money, do it on a backpack and a pair of shoes that fit you really well, because both of those are way cheaper than a chiropractor and getting knee surgery.
Yes. And I don't say anything right now. I'm like, there's so many brands as we mentioned in other podcasts. I'm like, there's plenty of different prices. If you go for anything that is not from this year, you get a really, really good price on any Brooks or any other big top brands. So if you look on, there's plenty of options to choose from.
And I think just with backpacks, one, I don't think people get them sized properly, so you should always get it sized. And I think a lot of women don't realize there's different types of straps. You can get like a J strap or an S strap. So it's always look into those sort of things as well. I think people just go to REI or some equivalent outdoor store and get whichever one the salesperson tells them to do. And that's a recipe for disaster.
And another question when we're talking about gear and it's getting more common and more common is walking sticks. Are we pro? Are we against? Where are you guys at?
I'm not a fan. I just find they get in the way. I feel like a praying mantis. Like it's just not great.
I cannot tell you how many times I've almost been stabbed in the face as I'm coming up behind someone that's swaying them around. On the Camino, I don't think they're needed at all. Like from a safety perspective or a support, there are a handful of places where it might be handy, more so going down than going up. Like after
like if you have any problems going down from from the first day down into Roncesvalles and also Breiro and then Alto del Perdón, that will be if you have any problems for sure. But other than that, and also if you're gonna have walking balls, please put the little rubber things on the bottom so we don't have to be the cling.
Yeah, generally I'm not a big fan. The only time I've ever used them is on Appalachian Trail because there's so much ups and downs on that.
Would most people use them on the Camino?
It's getting more and more often, but I think, as northern walking is getting more common and more people also, they realize that for, you can just put it in your backpack. Right now, they're super light, they're super cheap. You have, walking board from 10 euros up to as much as you want to spend. Lucky, there's really good brands. And they really say that they take about 20-30% of their body weight from your knees and hips and stuff like that. But for me, it's like you say, for me, I don't know. I always walk with my fingers here or holding my straps. So it's something I feel so weird. And they have a technique to walk. And a lot of people, they don't know that. So it's just walking weirdly.
I'd say probably 60% carry trekking poles, and then maybe another 10% have some type of walking stick that they've either bought somewhere along the way or found a stick and use. So it's not uncommon for sure, but it just depends what you want to do with your hands. I stop and take a bunch of photos, so it's really annoying to put the sticks down as well as take the camera out. So.
Yeah, I tend to walk on the same. I don't know why the hands up here on the straps. I don't know why. I've just always done it.
And what other gear do you think is important to talk about? A lot of people, they still talk about the sleeping bag, and in the times that you're going to be mixing hotels with albergues, that's really tricky, also depending on the time of the year.
Yeah, I'm leaving the 12th of May. I'll start walking. So I am a bit torn about the sleeping bag. I think I'd prefer to have it, and I can get it in my weight. But I know that is absolutely another hot topic. Probably the hottest topic, actually, behind shoes is the sleeping bag, liners, bed bugs.
I would always bring a sleeping bag on the Camino. Just, yes, in the middle of summer, it gets kind of warm, so bring a seasonal-based sleeping bag. But a lot of the albergues have like plastic sheets or plastic wraps around their mattresses. And if you're sleeping directly on that, it's like sticky and peels off. And yes, you can bring a liner, but vast majority of albergues don't have blankets to share, or at least enough to go around.
And that's one of the things I will say is always a good investment. If you're going to start on this walking wall, I'm like, sleeping bags can get really cheap if you look for off-season or for different years, and you can get online a really, really good one. And even if you don't want to spend money, you can go to REI or Decathlon, and you can get one for like 20 euros. So it's not that, and they're not that heavy. And if you have the money and you think this is something that you're going to go invest in a good, boots, backpack, and a sleeping bag is always great things to have. They're not gonna get bad or anything.
But if you're hiking in a warmer month like you're going to do in May, coming into June, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get a light sleeping bag because they're all light naturally.
Yeah.
So what other gear do you think we should cover? What other gear do you have problems, Rebecca, when you start thinking about what to put on your backpack?
It's probably not too much else. Probably more as a female is the whole toiletries thing around, like, obviously probably not much such an issue for you guys, but around like what to carry as far as like shampoo and
He
Soap
doesn't need
and
shampoo at all.
No, it's great. I love it. My
There's only
toiletry bag is literally like this big.
I know. I think there's only like 2 questions I haven't come to you with, and that was one of them. I was around, yeah. But there is one of the good forums I'm part of is the Camigas, which is for women,
Mhm.
which is they're a really great community. They're so supportive, and so they've been super helpful. But yeah, knowing what to pack and then what you can kind of buy along the way. And I'm an overpacker by nature, so if there's any chance I might possibly need it, I want to put it in. So I haven't. I've been good, but that has been sort of my thing about how much you really need.
And toiletries add up really quickly. Like
Yes,
a
they
lot of
do.
things you can save grams here and there, but toiletries add up very quickly.
Yes, that's been my
Yeah.
downfall. I was doing so well, but
And
I have
also, really being a woman, I'm like, you start adding, the shampoo, the conditioner, the whatever extra you need, and the lotions, and,
lotions and
it's just, do we need lipstick? Do we need all these face things? And I've seen people really carrying the whole thing, even, the whole iron
oh,
Yeah.
stuff and hair
fragrance.
dryers. I seen people with all kind of gear, and really at the end it's up to you how much stuff do you want to carry. But the small little things, and if you can just sleep in a hotel every once in a while, you can get shampoo refill, or you can get a small bottle of shampoo, the travel things. But as Quinton was saying, I'm like, once you start getting, you can get up to half a kilo pretty easily, and one up to as much as you want.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's been my biggest debate because I've sort of got the clothing, got the shoes and the backpack sorted early, got the clothing, that's all fine. It has come down to the toiletries and the weight and yeah, working out exactly what I really do need and what I can leave behind.
And right now, one of the big things that we're seeing here, is the soap, the shampoo, but the bar shampoo, and that's kind of
Yeah,
like easy, because sometimes a lot of people, the gel can get open in your backpack, and they can be a big mess. I've seen also that kind of thing. So that's an option right now that you can buy almost everywhere. Doesn't weigh too much, and it's really easy to carry.
yeah, absolutely. And people are using that for, soap, clothes washing, everything. So yeah, definitely something I've looked at.
I'll be honest, I don't bring soap or shampoo. I just find it at the albergues and use whatever I can along the way.
It's
Whatever
easy
is
enough
left
to
there.
find.
Yeah.
I'm
But
assuming people leave it behind.
there's always something there somewhere, and I'm a bit of a dirtbag backpacker, so I'm kind of used to that sort of stuff. But I do bring, and I was talking to Jose Marie about this, I do bring a little thing of baby powder. Like you can use a little bit of baby powder, like freshen yourself up, make sure that like I put it on my feet every morning so I don't sweat and get blisters and things like that. And if for whatever reason you can't have a shower for a day or whatever, just a little bit of baby powder is the way to go.
And one of the things that I learned from backpacking, I have these little towels that you can, just use as you know, and they're great if you one day you're just so sweaty, or you need just to clean up in the middle of the Camino, you have to run to the modern earth bathroom, and that's something that is going to happen one day. I'm like, there's bars everywhere, but and that's one of the other questions I love. What happened when you need to go do your own business in the Camino?
Absolutely. And I think as a female, that's so much harder than males. I feel gypped on this.
It's so much harder, like
Right now
especially
we
in the
have
setup.
all,
Where do you
but
hide?
I
what do
know
you
this
do
is
with that, Quinton? What is the trick?
Oh, I'm a guy. The world is my urinal, so it's fine. But
Yeah,
fine,
well,
but
well, when you were talking about number two, that can happen also. I'm like,
oh,
that
for
little
sure.
coffee that you have in the morning.
Yep. So I always take a little bit of toilet paper with me from an albergue every day and put it in my pocket.
And for me, I'm the same. I learned that from running from marathons. I always have toilet paper and one of those wet towels, just in case, always in my backpack. And one of the things a lot of people complain the Camino, I'm like, that's gonna happen. The good thing is normal to go poop in Mother Nature. There's no problem. Just get out of the way and try to cover,
And
your
bury it.
thing
That's
with
what drives
rocks or
me
whatever.
crazy.
So
People don't bury it, and I come from like a leave no trace on the trails here in America, and bury everything. Just do the right thing.
and a lot of people,
absolutely.
they talk about putting it into a bag and throwing it into a bin. And like, you don't need to go that far. I'm sorry. You don't need in Spain to carry your own shit. And like, this is not Antarctica. Just cover it, get out of the way, walk 2, 3 minutes, so it doesn't smell, because you will realize that sometimes in the Camino there's some of those places that you're like, I know what happens here.
That has actually been one of my concerns, is like, what do you do? And but I think, as you said, you just got to walk away, find a spot, and yeah,
Also, right
leave
now
no.
for women, they have these really, gadgets for hikers that you can use. So it's one of the things that if you feel comfortable and you clean it once in a while, they are super light. They are like rubbery, and
Yeah, I used to go to a lot of music festivals back in the day, and we certainly used a lot, and they're okay. They're probably not the, I don't know. It's a bit of an art.
and one of the other questions, when you talk about the Camino de Santiago, and really mostly it's the Camino Frances is a big deal. It's like the stages. Where does the Camino have, pre-stages? Can you walk as you want? Is there anything set up that I have to follow?
Okay.
Rebecca, would you start researching? What were your thoughts on, like, and I bet you have time to read every blog post, every YouTube channel.
Yeah, I actually had to stop. So I am a researcher, but it was almost like, I don't know, paralysis from information, and it just got too much. So I had to sort of find my ones that I really enjoyed, and just stop, because there's just so much information out there, and everyone says different things. It's so hard to work out what's actually best for you. So I really wanted to just stop and just take more when I get there, and just take it each day as it comes, and do it that way. Because I was getting into too much planning. I was like, stop. That's the whole reason. One of the reasons you're doing this is to get away from that planning and structure. So the more information that came at me, the more I wanted to plan, and I was like, nah, it's stop.
What
I
are your
think
thoughts about this, Quinton?
couple of things, I guess, that I learned. It depends a lot on if you're a like early morning riser. Like I'm usually up and out the Albergue at like 6:30 at the latest, so I'm often going. But everyone stresses a lot about getting a bed at the end, and yes, that's real depending on where you are and the time of year. But I've never had a problem if I finish by like 3 o'clock at the latest, ideally 2 o'clock in the day, because by then the albergues are just starting to open. You're not the last person to get there. So I would plan more about trying to finish mid-afternoon. You start to get in trouble if you're ending at like 4, 5, 6 o'clock, then you might have issues. So I would always just finish a little bit earlier, and I would probably stay away from like the Briley stage ends, and Briley's the very popular kind of guidebook, because vast majority of people follow that as the gospel and say, I must stop at this spot because that's what Briley says. Go one town further or one town less, and you'll find half as many people.
And one of the things I learned with my first Camino is that sometimes, as you said at the beginning, there's the preset stages that everybody follows, because there's not really that many, and you start to walk and you get those 20K, and that's kind of like mandatory. As you start spreading, through the Camino, you have so many options that sometimes, for example, if you want to stay in Grañón, it needs a little planning because it's not the average stage, so you have to break it a little bit. And also, one of the things I realized when we would start walking, we decided that for some of the big cities, because we didn't want to take a day off, what we did, for example, for Burgos or for León, we planned to stay like close enough, the day prior, so we can arrive really early and enjoy a full, kind of like a full day over there. And that's where that's all the planning that I did. Other than that, it was just almost sometimes, as Quinton was saying, trying to avoid the main places, because you get a more, kind of like pilgrim vibe over there, because it's only the weirdos that they don't follow, or people that are gonna, and you get like a smaller community. But the big places are good to stay, but sometimes they're gonna be overbooked. So if you don't start walking early, by the time you arrive, it
Yeah,
depends on
and
the time of the year,
there are
you will
some
see a lot of
good
people.
there are some good towns. Like Logroño is a great place. The food's amazing, really nice. It's
Mhm.
compact enough that you can walk around everywhere. And then something like Hontanas, which is a tiny little Camino town, is just amazing. And I try and aim for a few places that I know I like, but depending on how far you're walking, like I don't plan it out that much. If I'm feeling good, I'll keep going. I know my longest day on the Camino was close to 60 kilometers because I was just enjoying the walk, and it's wherever you feel like ending. So
I don't know anyone who could use the word enjoyment and 60 kilometers in that
Oh,
same little sentence there.
I was having so
There's
much fun, and it was
there's some weirdos out there.
it was also in the last 100 kilometers. So I was getting close to, I think it was Zofra or Azura, somewhere like that, and I don't really like that town, so I just kind of kept walking, and I was having a good time.
And that's another big question. The last 100K of the Camino de Santiago, what happened once you get there? Usually a lot of people they talk. We have all these, oh, the no pilgrinos, the turigrinos, the blah blah blah, and it gets a little. I don't know how was your feeling, but for me it was weird. When you arrive there and you see all these people. My first Camino was during the summer, so it was kind of like strange. And at the time we follow mostly the normal stages. Right now I know myself better, and I know that there's little villages in between that if you walk a couple K more or less, you are gonna be feeling the same thing that in the Camino. I don't know how did you feel about the last 100K. Q.
I agree. It does get pretty packed. Something like Sarria, when you first come into it, is all these like high-rise buildings that are like for all the people that are starting that last 100 kilometers. You get to the center of town, and it's really beautiful, small, historic area. But they used to all the new pilgrims used to bug the hell out of me because they're still finding their feet, and they come in like big packs. But then I started looking at all their faces, and I realized just how excited they are, and like they're finally on their Camino. And once I realized how excited they are, yes, there's some groups of like kids and things like that, especially that play loud music or whatever it happens to be. But the vast majority are just so thrilled, like they're literally in your way because they're looking around in amazement, and that got me past all of that.
Also, the way that they look at you, you're like the cool guy, the guy
Yeah,
that walked the
exactly.
whole Camino. You walk the long distance. You are the one that smells. Your t-shirt already is kind of like, your shoes are already worn off. It's just funny, and I get both feelings. Sometimes it's annoying, but sometimes you have the best conversations ever because they want to get everything.
Yeah,
And I
but
always say, don't call those the last 100K, call them the first 100K because a lot of those people will go and walk the Camino again.
for sure. And it's just fascinating to see they've got like shiny new gear, and they still smell nice, and they're not like sunburned and everywhere. And I guess you feel a bit more legitimate because like you've walked all the way.
And another big question sometimes in the Camino is food. What do you do with food in the Camino? And everybody talks about these communal meals. Everybody talks about, tapas in Spain. Everybody talks about, cooking in the albergues. Now that COVID is gone, we're back to normal life. So how did you manage in your Camino when you were walking?
First and foremost, I ate everything. The food is so cheap and so good, and there is so much of it. I didn't cook very much. There's only a handful of times that I can remember, and it's usually if I've met a couple of people and we went to the supermercado and bought things together. But I don't know. I like the talking with the locals, and they'll make local food that tastes different to what I would have at home. Yes, it gets a little bland and boring after a while having similar things, but I don't know. I like to support the local community, so I'll go out and eat a Pilgrim menu or something almost every night.
What are your thoughts about food, Rebecca?
I'm pretty easygoing as well with food, so it's not really something I'm too concerned about. And everyone sort of talks about amazing things they've found, and I've forgotten the name of the cake.
Tata de Santiago.
Yeah.
So good.
Tortilla de patatas.
Everybody talks about it. Everybody who's been. So
Tortilla or the tate?
Oh, I don't know. I can't remember.
Is it a sweet one or like a breakfast?
The sweet one. The sweet.
Oh yeah, tate de Santiago.
Tortillas.
Yeah.
And you know what is the messiest thing? It's not really that good, but I guess the feeling when you get to Santiago is one of those memories that you have like, put 100 times better, much better than what it is. And I have it once in a time, and it's good, but it's one of those like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, I would rather
No,
have carrot cake or cheesecake or.
No. And I definitely noticed the closer you get to Santiago, the better it tastes. And maybe it's because you've walked all that way, or I think it's less store-bought and more homemade because it's more like Galician or something, I guess.
One of the things that I think is mandatory, if you're a foodie and also if this is one in a lifetime that you've been planning and you have the money, give yourself a treat every once in a while. Thank God in Spain we have an amazing cuisine. We have all these incredible restaurants. And if you like it, it's worth giving yourself a star Michelin every once in a while. And the price compared to anywhere in the world, I'm like, we're
It's cheap.
talking to going to a one-star Michelin can be 150 euros. If you go to anywhere in the world, in LA or in Australia, I bet it can be much more than that. And if you like it, the only thing, if it's going by yourself, might be a little weird to go to this kind of restaurants. But if
Yeah.
you're a food person, I'm like, you're gonna have an incredible time everywhere. The food changes so much from the Pyrenees all the way to Santiago. The dishes, they're so different. Try local food, enjoy. Try to avoid sometimes the menú del peregrino and ask around, because sometimes it's really a big scam. They will give you pasta and chicken, and sometimes if you go to the next bar, they don't have menú del peregrino, but they will give you a really good menu for the same price. But food here in Spain is, one of the things, I guess, food, wine, and beer is we're really proud of, and it's a part of the Camino also.
Get,
Absolutely. And everyone
get
says how amazing it is. And if something's going to upset people, it's food. So,
it,
yeah,
it does
I'm really
become a
excited.
little bland and beige after a while. Like it's always brown. But if you go off the Pilgrim menu, there's plenty of others. But always get the pimientos. That's always my rule. So.
We'll follow your journey, and don't worry, Rebecca. I will wait for you here in Pamplona, and we'll discover the good places. Not like this guy; he always runs from Pamplona.
That's because I'm there at like 8 a.m. in the morning. So it's
He's got to walk 60 Ks. He's got to go quick.
it's just distance wise. Pamplona is always like first thing in the morning. So
And it's true for a lot of people. Right now it's getting more common to take a day off in Pamplona, but mostly the pilgrims, when they start walking, you're getting into that Camino vibe. And at the beginning, I always say, we all start the same. We are just in a rush to get the feeling, to feel the Camino. And Pamplona's day 3. I'm like, I'm all on my way. So, but if you have the time, it's a pretty cool place to stop. And not because I live here, but it is really,
yeah,
there's a
it's
lot of
nice.
things to see and different. And one of the things that brought me to this, a lot of times people talk about, sending your backpack ahead. We talk about that, and also skipping places or taking a taxi. What do you think about this, Rebecca? Have you thought about sending your backpack, or have you thought about maybe skipping the meseta or taking a taxi one day?
No, I'm the kind of person, if I'm doing something, I'm doing it all. So I definitely, obviously, if there's an injury or something, I'm open to it, but I don't plan on skipping anything. And I also want to keep my pack with me as much as I can, just to have that freedom to be able to stop where I want to. I actually did sustain a shoulder injury a couple of months ago, which I was really worried about carrying the pack, but I changed to a different pack and it's been fine. So it's definitely something I'd consider if I needed to, but would prefer not to.
Well, once you get rid of your 10 kilograms of toiletries, you'll be fine.
Hey,
What are
I'm
your
at
thoughts
7.
about this, Quinton, about skipping or sending your backpack ahead?
I think everyone has to walk their own Camino or hike. That's first and foremost. Anyone that I talk to, I would definitely say try not and like skip big stages like the Meseta. I think is really beautiful for its own reasons. It's hard, but it's beautiful. But if you have to catch a taxi or whatever, do you? That's fine. And I've never done it, but I always see people shipping their backpacks. And I think if you're having a hard day or something, go ahead and do it. Like you're still walking the same distance. Like it's not going to be less authentic if you do anything like that. Rebecca made a good point though. If you ship your backpack, you're committing to staying somewhere at a certain town.
Yeah.
So that's probably the negative
And
side
that's
of
what
it.
a lot of people, they left the backpacks in an albergue or something, and that's not fair for the albergue if you're not going to stay there. Then
Yeah,
sometimes it's also
correct.
sending your backpack puts you to those stages. But as you were saying, if you have to do it, it's your own camino. I'm like, you're the only one. A lot of people, they say cheating. I'm like, who cheating? Is You're just cheating to yourself. And I have both sides of the story. People that send their backpack, ahead, or even take a taxi, and they save their camino and really they save their injuries. And some other people that decided not to, and that messed up the whole camino. But it's up to each one.
And there's a term in like the through hiking community here called slack packing, which is when you do a section without a backpack. And I would always suggest that like if you're running short of time, don't take a taxi and skip somewhere. Slack pack and ship your bag ahead so you can do a double day or a double stage or something like that. So you're still walking
And
and
something
seeing everything.
That's something that I mentioned to a couple of my clients. They don't have the time to do the whole Camino Frances, but they want to experience. And some of them, what they did, they walked the first part of the Camino, like from the Pyrenees up to the Meseta walking, then did the Meseta by bike, by a mountain bike, and then catch up and start walking again. And that's something different. I wouldn't do it for myself, but I think it's a cool idea if you really want to experience the whole way and get the vibe of the what is biking, what is walking the Camino, and get, the best out of both.
Yeah, I agree. Although
Yeah.
biking doesn't sound much fun to me.
No.
Nope, for me, I'm a packer, and I don't even know how to walk without a backpack. For no, even if I go on a day walk, I carry my backpack because I don't know to walk without something on my back. It just feels weird.
So, as a psychologist, you have fears about abandonment.
I guess I don't feel hanging on when I was a child.
But it is something strange when especially if you're doing like long distance hikes and you walk around town and something feels like you're missing or you're not leaning forward because you don't have that weight that you're so familiar with.
I know that you have a bigger weight on your back. I'm like, you have what, 5 kilos?
Mine
Yeah,
is
huge.
getting 5 kilos now. I'll have to get it less.
5 kilos. That's for the next podcast. And Rebecca, what other questions, what other worries do you have? Right now that your Camino is almost there.
Yeah, I think as a female traveling alone, you do have some safety concerns. You just feel a bit more vulnerable, I think, being on your own. And of course, you hear some of the horror stories, and I'm sure they're one in a million stories, but you just hear
It's
them.
one in a million, yeah.
Yeah,
But it's there.
yeah, that's
One of the
right.
things
And oh, sorry.
Oh, one of the things that right now with the Camino, in the last years happens, and I always recommend everyone is like if your mobile plan it's really expensive. Usually here in Spain, for 15 euros, 20 euros, you can get a really good plan. And right now there's first of all, there is police in the Camino. They're undercover police, in the Camino, and the Camino is full cover with police also. And there is an app that is called Alert Cops that is, just to advise, anything that happened in the Camino if you see it, or if it happens to you. So it is really good to get it installed as soon as you get in Spain because that will connect you to the police, to the fire department, and to everyone. And really important to know that here in Spain is not 911, it's 112, and that will get you connected to anything you need. But the good thing of the Camino Front is like if you are 4 or 5 kilometers away from any town, the longest. I don't think there's any day that there is a longer distance to a big town or a small village.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's probably no greater danger than walking around the streets of Melbourne by yourself. I think you just feel when you're in a foreign country, you just feel that little bit more vulnerable traveling alone. But,
and I think definitely for women, it's going to be different no matter what. But so many people when they travel forget their common sense that they would at home. Like don't put headphones on and walk around and not listen to the world around you and not know someone's coming up behind you. It doesn't matter if you're on a trail or in a big city. But the Camino, I've never experienced anything but people being friendly and open for sure. So.
Usually it's the opposite. People taking care of each other. I think in my first Camino, I lost my wallet like 2 times. I'm like the guy that brought me my wallet paid for my lunch, and like people, pushing each other, giving each other. I see someone giving someone else 200 euros without knowing if they're gonna get it back, and that's the kind of like camaraderie you see in the Camino de Santiago.
Absolutely, and you hear 100 or 1,000 more stories like that than any bad stories. So it's not a huge concern.
One of the things that when we talk about safety, and I know you, Quinton, you say already you're an early raiser. A lot of people they complain about the people that will like to walk in the morning. For me, it's not about the running and getting fast into town. It's like I really like to walk and down and see the sun rise when I'm walking because that's such a peaceful time and it's lovely. But in terms of safety, within the Camino Santiago, sometimes that people, well, there was a couple of stories of someone that getting run by a car. So I don't know if you carry any lights or something reflecting when you walk in the morning.
I always have a headlamp for sure, and my backpack has some reflective strips on. But it's also a reason why I much prefer to hike early in the year, like April, May, because the sun's comes up earlier. By September, August, the sun doesn't come up till 8 o'clock. So I've been walking 3 hours in the dark, and it's not necessarily about the safety aspect there. I just walk for like 12, 15 kilometers and I have not seen a single thing on the landscape. So I'll always bring a headlamp, without a doubt, bring a headlamp on the Camino.
What time does the sun rise in May?
Maybe around 6.
I will say probably 6-ish, 6, 7, between 6:30-ish. But I will say, if you're gonna carry a light, I'm like sometimes I hate people walking in the morning with a headlamp because that usually blocks the distance that you can see. For me, I'm really used to hiking the mountain, so I'm really used, and I get some people really fell. that they need the light. But I will suggest a small red light on your backpack so people can see you and cars can see you in the morning. If you're an early racer, that's super cheap, and that will help a lot in case of, because sometimes you go really close to roads, so you have to close the roads, and if you have something reflecting also that helps. And like you don't really need like any big thing, but something like that will be really helpful.
But sunrise when you're hiking is just the best. You have the
Yeah,
whole world to
amazing.
yourself, and the world is coming awake. It's the best time.
The smell, the feeling, everything is.
Even
And
the
that will be
bird.
one of the things. Sorry, I will say, when you go to Ocebreiro in the morning, Ocebreiro at sunset, Ocebreiro at sunrise. Ocebreiro, no, sorry, Cruz de Ferro.
Mm-hmm. Every time I've done Cruz de Ferro, I've got there at like 6 a.m. in the morning, so it's always been dark or just past sunrise. So I prefer it in the sunrise for sure, because I usually stay either at Astorga, or I can't remember the small town about halfway between, near where the cowboy bar is.
Yeah, that's the perfect place to stay if you want to really, stay in Cruz de Ferro. And that's one of the places that, for example, you have to plan. If you want to see the sunrise in Cruz de Ferro, and that's sometimes something like Finisterre, sometimes you go there and there's so much fog and that you don't see anything. But if you get one of those open days and you see the sunrise over there, it's incredible.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
And Rebecca, another big question when it comes to planning the first Camino. Are you gonna keep on walking to Finisterre and Musia, or?
I'm hoping to. I'm just not sure time-wise how it will go. It was the original plan. If I've got enough time, absolutely. I grew up on the beach. The water is my happy place, and for me, that will feel like a complete ending of the walk for me. But there's always time to go back and do that another time if I feel I still need to do that and I haven't got time this time.
And what do you think, Quinton? First Fisterra and then Musia, first Musia, then Fisterra.
we've
Yes.
had this discussion a bunch of times.
I know, and we're always gonna keep it coming. It's one of those big fights of the Camino. Who do you love more, Daddy or?
I like doing Musha first and then finishing in Fisterra, because I can walk all day with the sun and the ocean on my side. But Fisterra is kind of a bit more of a party place, so it's a nice, easy way to get back to Santiago. Musha is very kind of solitary and a little bit more introspective, and I don't like to leave on that too much of an introspection note. I'd prefer to, like, for whatever reason, for me, the lighthouse at Fisterra is the end. And once I can kind of like touch that lighthouse, then I feel like I've finished.
And that's a good question you were saying, Rebecca. Sometimes people don't have the time. And, I always mention if you want to visit, there's many buses that go to Fisterra or Musia, and that's another option. You can just go there and walk, for example, from Fisterra to Musia. And if you want to finish on a big note, if you stay, you're going to stay at the lighthouse. They have like 5 rooms over there, and it must be incredible.
That would be
And
great.
if you want to finish on a more other big, and in Musia, they just open usually paradors here in Spain. They're kind of like all buildings and stuff. But in Musia, they open a parador that is brand new with a spa, and it is incredible. So if you want to give yourself some, well-deserved, relax end day, you have an amazing place to stay, and the food over there is just, if you like seafood, nothing better than going to Musia.
But don't rush out of Santiago either. Like
No.
one of my favorite things is stay a few days, and every every morning just hang out in the square and watch all the pilgrims come in. It's just the best experience.
That is without doubt the best thing. You see the faces, and it's like reviving you're coming into Santiago.
And I think I will wait and just see how I feel. I know, I remember we've had a conversation about this before, and you were saying you knew on your first one you were done. You didn't need to keep going.
Yeah. I just didn't want to get out of the Camino bubble. I just wanted to stay there, and I didn't need to go any further. This was where I had to be.
Just soak it up. Yeah.
And I don't know if there's any other questions that we need to cover, but I think we covered mostly all of the first, Camino questions.
No, I'm just so excited for you. Like, this has been, like I said, I still chase my first experience, and helping you through it is been so much fun for me.
It's been amazing, and I've gone back and read your book like recently as well, and yeah, we actually did, like, I have my little guidebook out, and we did like a virtual, you were saying before, a virtual caminos. Every day I'd be like, oh, I'm in this town, and Quentin would be like, oh, stay here, or don't stay here, check this out. And it was so amazing. We got me so excited, and I'd loved it. Every day I'd have the book out and checking where I'm up to and Googling pictures. It's been really,
you're gonna have
really amazing.
It's
Just
one of things
don't.
that is amazing. I think Quentin has the same experience. When you help another pilgrim or with a future pilgrim, you get all pumped up. It's this feeling of the Camino that you don't really need to even to walk the Camino. Like right now, just talking to you, it feels like I'm so excited of your Camino that it's incredible. I'm like, what this gets to do to people.
It is so exciting. And everyone you talk to, or I say what I'm doing, they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And, can't wait to hear all about it. And people are thinking about doing their own. And I think, gosh, that's before I've even been. Imagine what I'll be like when I get back and telling anyone who'll listen about the adventures.
And once you get back, we'll have to do this interview again and see if the Camino was everything you planned, if we were mistaken in any way. And, so hopefully we will in some of the things, because at the end, that's the beauty of the Camino. There's only one Camino and it's yours. And that's what I hate when people start saying that there's only one kind of Camino, one kind of zoo, one kind of place to stay. I'm like, no, that's the beauty of the Camino de Santiago. There's one for everyone and it doesn't matter.
Absolutely. It's
And
your community.
I'll be interested to see if you're still talking to me afterwards, or if you're like, why the hell did I do that?
I will find you if I have to. I'll hunt you down. Why didn't you talk me out of this?
Exactly.
Anyway, thank you so much for both of you to taking the time. And we always say, Rebecca, buen camino, ultrella.
Thank you.